Hello fellow AGD coders, welcome to another video, and today we're going to be looking at some new code that I've created for making mini dialog boxes. And as you can see, I'm using Andy John's game Nixie once again to demo this, and let's take a look at what happens when we grab this little stone. And there you go, we get a little message coming up with a little bit of an instruction, and the player then presses a key and the game continues. So you can use this in your games to give the player a little bit more immersion, if you like, a kind of comic book feel, maybe something like that. And obviously the Spectrum screen is not very high resolution, so this can help because it's kind of mini font. And as you can see there, it runs a message that you create. I'll explain the syntax there and some of the characters and why we're using them a little bit later. But first of all, we can just show you how it runs in the code. And as you can see here, we've got a new command. It's called dbox. dbox34 means create a dialog box using message 34. We can set the line, we set the color, we set the column, and then here we've got a wait key and a redraw command. So basically, yeah, we just wait for the player to hit a key and then wipe over the message. And that's just one way that we can use this. Right, so let's move on and let's go to a fresh load of AGD, and we'll go into more detail about how to install this. It's pretty straightforward, really. Works in a similar way to some of the other recent add-ons that I've made. And basically you have to set up the memory, reserve the memory, and then just load it in and then run a poke file, and then we'll have a new command. It actually replaces the command big message, but it will work with any mode. So the first thing you do is you turn edit pointers on. This is from a fresh version, but it would be okay if you have your game in there as well. We then move down to here, sprite, so it's highlighted, and we need to reserve, in this case, 310 bytes. So I've pressed Control 4 there 3 times, and I'm now going to press Control 2 10 times. There we go. And I think I'll just, for good measure, I'll just add a couple of bytes just in case. Always good to be on the safe side. So there, now what we do then, we go to the font and exit, and we'll see that our memory has been reduced up there, and we've reserved, in fact, now 312 bytes of space. And we'll turn the pointers off, and we'll now load our code in. So we just go to load the binary. This will of course be in the zip. So we'll load binary data. Obviously you don't have all these other things I've been messing about with, but there we go, 36944. That's where you load it in. So we load it in there, 36944 here, and as you can see, 310 bytes. And this includes the little mini font, which is about 80 bytes, and we'll come to that a little bit later. So we load that in, and that's done. And now all we have to do is to open the POC file, which again will be in the zip. There it is. So you run that and you enable it there. Now incidentally, this code requires the font to be exactly aligned at a 256 byte point of memory, and for that reason it's not very movable. You could move it, but you kind of need to know what you're doing. So you know, if you do want to do that, drop me a message on Facebook or something. I can probably help you, but best to leave it right here. Okay, so let's create a message, and I'll run through a few things. There's a basic message, and it's very, very easy to print a message on screen. Now, what we want to do here is, because we're going to put something in a loop, we don't want it to just keep over and over printing it, because the way that it prints would actually cause the message to flicker if we did that. So what we'll do is we'll set rand to 255. This is a common trick that I use to make something run only once. And then in the main sort of menu, main loop I should say, we'll put rand 255. If it is, we'll run our code, So let's say we put it there at line 6, column 14, and we'll put dbox O, and then we'll put let rand 0 and end if. Incidentally, column, when you're using it for dbox, is 0 to 63 because it's 64 columns. So there we go, and there's our message. But it'd be nice if we had a little bit of an edge there. It's not quite central. The reason for that is simply because of the column that we've chosen, because obviously we've got attributes there, but we can't divide attributes into half. So if we let's get rid of that. If we change this column to an odd column like that, you'll find that it generally centers it in the attribute position that little bit better there. Okay, so let's look at a few other options that we have with this, because obviously, as you saw, we can move it around, we can change it, and so on. So pretty easy to do. Go back into here. Let's try adding a color. So we'll just put in here, say, let's put white on black on white. Let's say 56. There you go. Easy enough. And you can use any attribute, of course. I could just show you that here. We'll try another one. Just pick one at random. I'll just type any old number in there, and whoops, I seem to have picked green on green, so that wasn't ideal. Let's change that. A little bit of light relief for us there. Okay, so we'll go back. There we go. That should be black. There you go. And that's flashing because obviously we've added 64 to that number, 128. Sorry, I should say. So yeah, you can control bright and so on, just whatever attribute you want, and you can change the message box to that attribute. Nice and simple. Okay, so let's just switch this back to a non-flashing one for the next part, and I'm just thinking of what we want there. Let's try, yeah, yellow on blue, blue on yellow. There we go. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about the additional characters and how the whole thing works. The font is only 32 characters, and it's all byte aligned, as I mentioned. So therefore, it's only these characters here, all the way across, from there all the way across to there. But what I've done is I've used a mask, and what that basically will mean is that when you type, for example, anything up here, say 0, 1, 2, 3, then you'll end up with PQRS. But similarly, if you use lowercase, you'll get uppercase, and that works actually quite well, because it actually means that the space here and also the question mark, which is at the other end, will actually both work fine. And what that left me with was these 4 characters here. So I had to decide which 4 characters would be the most useful for a dialog box, and the most obvious ones were exclamation mark, full stop, a comma, and a trailing space. So what I did was I decided, if you look here just on the first row, you can see we've got semicolon here, and smaller than, and greater than, and equals. So those are the ones that we're going to use. We could use the square brackets and the backslash, but they're harder to access. So if we go to our message editor here, I'll show you now that this is how that works. So the semicolon, I chose that for the exclamation mark because, well, basically semicolon is kind of like an exclamation mark upside down, so quite easy to remember that that's exclamation mark. For the full stop and the comma, I decided to use the greater than and less than symbols, and there was a logical reason for this, and that is, if you actually look at your PC keyboard, at least for most of us on our PC keyboard, you'll see that greater than and less than actually share a key with comma and full stop. So if you're not sure which one is comma and which one is full stop, it's very easy to remember. For most of us anyway, we can just look at our keyboard and see that comma and full stop are basically less than and greater than. There, so that one will be a full stop and that one will be a comma. Let's take a look, and there you go. So easy enough. Again, some method in my madness, I hope you agree. The final one, let's show you a question mark as well, just to show you that that does actually work. Let's go back and we'll put a question mark in there. Let's see if that works okay. So if I can remember where it is on the Spectrum keyboard, there we go. Okay, yep, so question mark is fine. And the other thing then that we wanted was a trailing space, and that's just because of the way that AGD works. And so what I wanted to do was, if I want to sort of put some border around our dialog box, then on that side it's easy enough to do like that, and it will work with no problem. But of course with AGD it won't accept trailing spaces here. So what I'm going to do instead, what we do is we'll use the equal sign to just fill that out. And again, it's pretty easy to remember. And if we put those equal signs in there like that, then it will create the wider dialog box, just like that. So if you want to have a box which is a little bit wider and your text is in the center, then you can play about with it, and it's quite flexible that way as well. Okay, and as for a border at the top and the bottom, well, that's actually pretty straightforward. You can just press return here and it will just add it there, and I can put one at the bottom as well, just like that, and that will work as well. So yeah, it's pretty flexible. I hope you agree. The font, as I said, is only 80 bytes. And in fact, what I've done, I was just having a little play about, and I thought it'd be nice to see how many fonts I could make that were usable, and I've actually managed to get a pretty nice total of 8 different fonts that to choose from. So the first two are pretty straightforward. The second one is just a kind of squarer version of the first one, so not that interesting. But let's look at font 3. And all you have to do here is load binary data in at 37120, and you can load one of the 8 different fonts, whichever might be more suitable for your game. It is possible, of course, to design your own as well. And again, if you want to try that, you can send me a message on Facebook. I can give you some pointers. It's not massively fiddly, but you need a little bit of knowledge, because these are only 5 bytes per character, not 8. But you can do it in ZX Paintbrush. That's basically how I made them. So there was another one there, as you probably saw. That was a kind of italicized one, quite nice for sort of dialogue boxes that look like a comic book. And then this one is a kind of, I guess it looks a little bit like something that's been carved into a tree or something like that. And again, I mean, you know, you can use these to not just for dialogue boxes. You can use them to put text in your background. You know, if you want to have some signs on the wall or something, then you just need to trigger something when the screen is drawn. It's pretty straightforward, and probably won't take up as much memory as creating blocks for every one, because obviously you can have as many different dialogues as you want with this method. Okay, so, and you can put them anywhere you want. Alright, so there we go, and there's another one. That's a kind of sci-fi style, kind of Blade Runner effect maybe. Again, it's very tricky working with only 5x3 pixels. I was quite surprised that I managed to get the amount of variation that I did, really. There is a sort of lowercase version, and the final one here is, let's just see, there we go. And yeah, I mean, in theory it would be possible to have perhaps a 160 byte font with a full lower and uppercase. You'd probably just need to use some kind of a shift and something that you could then add to the address so that it would find it. But I think this is fine, really, isn't it, for its purpose? So yeah, that's, I guess, more or less it, really. There's a nice little range of fonts. I hope you enjoy having a play about with this. I'd certainly look forward to seeing if any of you do decide to use it in a game. I think it's got quite a lot of potential to to make a game a little bit more interesting for the player, and I certainly enjoyed the challenge of making it. Anyway, that's enough for today, I think. I'll perhaps see you all on the Facebook page, but do remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and don't be shy if you want to ask questions. I'm always happy to try and answer them, and I'll see you in the next video. And in the meantime, as always, happy coding. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.